on this bill shortly after speaking with us. Congressman, great to have you. Appreciate it. I know it's a big day. Let me begin by asking you, the president could have released these files at any time since he's been in office. Why has Congress needed to force him to do what he said he was going to do months ago?
You know, these are important questions to ask. The real question that I think that I would ask is, why did the Rules Committee dismiss this topic rather than coming up with their own piece of legislation? They made sure it did not pass 9 times. And every single person in this body that's a Republican probably joined with the, what I would say, the overwhelming cry last year during the campaign to say this is of immediate attention. We as Republicans were disappointed that this was not done during President Biden, but that's passed. Now the question is, how can we thoughtfully accomplish this? And I think that we should have come up with exactly the same things that the Speaker is talking about. We could have put it in our own bill. We could have put it to the Rules Committee. It should have passed. It would pass on the House floor, and we wouldn't be asking the Senate to make up the things that are deficits or problems in this now. They are a problem. But we, as Republicans, I think every person in this body recognizes that this has gotten out of hand. It's no longer where it started, and it was not handled properly. And so we're going to now pass our problem to the Senate.
Okay, but it doesn't have to get out of hand, and it didn't have to reach this point. The president could just say, here you go, here's the files. I mean, nothing's stopping him but himself.
Well, Kara, I will disagree with that. What we're trying to do is not to release the files. We're trying to release the law enforcement reports of this that do not have innocent people involved in them, that do not have ancillary names that could be associated with it. The Epstein, so to speak, files that are there now were not even included in what this response was supposed to be for the discharge petition, and yet they have appeared. So if we had properly looked at this, it would have been a law enforcement file to answer the questions that really I think you and I, because we've talked before, need to know, and that is who had the documents, how long, who had custody, and how long had they been there, and what are the actual facts of the case. The release of this data and information will be a smattering of all sorts of things that were just in a file, not the answer of hours and years of people looking at this. We are going to find where people are falsely accused. Their name may be in, their name that are not necessarily truthful. And we need to answer the question, who paid the money? Did these people that attended pay the money? And we have begun that on a bipartisan basis in government reform. And we've asked the questions of the original U.S. Attorney Prosecutor. And we asked that, and he gave us the story that at the time in 2006, 7, and 8, about what they knew, who they knew had this information. But simply to release information that is not vetted, that may not be true, is a disservice. Also, there is nothing in here to stop the disclosure of files of videos that may include young women, and we would be reopening just a new part of this, all for the sake of politics, not for the sake of transparency.
How are you going to vote, Congressman, when you go in there?
Every single person is going to vote yes. None of us want to be seen or chastised that we weren't for this. We were for official law enforcement files that we could then judge what was officially done. We are not for going through this and saying, oh, look, one person's name is on here and been taken out of context. And this is the danger which is where we are. And I will tell you, I place a good bit of responsibility on our team that did not come up with the right language that today they're insisting on.
So you're talking about protecting names, possibly things tied to law enforcement. That's understandable. You're saying you're not necessarily looking for a client list of any type, but are you curious? Do you want to know? Do other Republicans want to know if there are more damning details about the President of the United States that exist in these files? Is that of interest to you and other lawmakers?
Sure, it would be. But you also have not heard from Ms. Maxwell when she, as part of this, said, I don't even recall Donald Trump ever being around. And so where is that information? This came from the Epstein files. I'm simply saying that we need to deal with what I consider to be vetted questions answered to where we can tell the story. I promised you some time ago that I would be able to answer the question, what happened in 2004? What happened in 2005? Who was paying for this? How did this occur? Why was it delayed? Why was this prosecuted in Florida? We now know why it was prosecuted by Florida as opposed to a federal grand jury. We now know some of these answers. My point is that the tightness of this that would need the scrutiny of members of Congress to shield people who were not involved, who were not just part of a report, and that will not happen now. Presumptively. So we're going to ask the Senate to do what we should have done.
Well, Trump recently directed the DOJ, as you know, to begin investigations into high-profile Democrats like Bill Clinton and others for their ties to Epstein. In July, his Justice Department said that there was nothing to suggest further people being charged. What changed other than the public pressure on Trump?
What changed is the United States House of Representatives failed to put forward our enunciation in a bill of what we were doing and what we would expect to happen. Everything here is, as you know, there is an equal challenge on either side, and for every side there's an equal and opposite reaction. And we failed to have our best bill on the floor, and that's why we don't have it today.
One more question, Congressman. That the bill carves out exceptions for documents not to be released if they're part of a current investigation. And you just pointed out you support that. So are these new investigations, though, that we're talking about into prominent Democrats just an excuse not to release all of the files?
Well, this was written as a discharge petition that I think was by someone who did not see the full depth of the evaluation. It was never meant to be a policy update. It was meant to be a political hit. And it was drawn that way, it was executed that way, and it's being voted on that way today. And I think that we in the House of Representatives, certainly Republicans in the majority, need to do better to see this for what it is and to counter the move months ago. And that's all I'm simply suggesting. There are things which I do not completely understand, which James Comer has gotten into, the Speaker has gotten into. They are legal documents, and there's a lot of information here. As you recall, we remember when the Attorney General Bondi said she thought she had the documents, and then within days or weeks she said, whoops, I don't have all the information. So these would be things that our bill would have taken into account. 100% of the information would have been available. And this is where the crack came, because all of a sudden we figured out, whoa, maybe we're not going to get all of the documents. And this created then our friends, the Democrats, coming to a discharge petition that they have been successful at, and we are left flat-footed. It does not mean that they're right and we're wrong, and it certainly doesn't mean anything, because we're all going to vote the same way. But I would caution us and the people listening to know this is going to be further debate that needs to be handled in a more professional way on a bipartisan basis, which I hope it will be in the Senate.
Congressman Pete Sessions, appreciate your time. I know you're heading in there to vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's take another live look at the House floor where Congressman Sessions will be headed.